Welcome back to Level Up Stronger, the podcast where we dive deep into personal growth, overcoming challenges, and unlocking our true potential. Today, we're taking a heartfelt journey back in time. We're your hosts, Tiffany Letterly and Ken Lyon.
Imagine you could sit down with your younger self, looking into those eyes full of dreams, doubts, and the unknown future. What would you say? What wisdom, warnings, or encouragement would you share, knowing what you know now?
This episode, we're not just reflecting, we're imparting. We'll explore the advice we wish we could have given our younger selves, the lessons learned through trial and error, and how those insights can guide us and our listeners towards a stronger, more fulfilled future.
So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or a moment of connection with your past and future self, stay tuned as we share our letters to yesterday, filled with the knowledge of today.
Today, we embark on a journey unlike any other, a voyage back in time with a mission not to just reminisce, but to illuminate the path we've walked with the lanterns of hindsight. Picture yourself seated across from the person that you were a decade ago, a year ago, or maybe just yesterday. There's so much you want to say, so much you wish you knew, but what if you could? What advice would you give that younger version of you who stands at the crossroads of countless decisions, dreams, and dilemmas?
Yeah, what advice, right?
You know, sometimes you have those situations where you're caught in a moment and it's like deja vu. And then you're like, what is it about this particular moment I am connecting with? Because I think deja vu is often taking you back to something that a circumstance or something that you've like been in, a scenario you've been in before, right?
Absolutely.
So I had been at the vet's office and I'm sitting there in the vet's office completely quiet, right? The smells like a vet's office. And I had this like flash of deja vu. I looked over to the lady standing behind the desk and I realized that 12 years ago, and at that point it had been 12 years previously, it's been a few more years since then, I had actually been standing behind that desk. I worked at that vet's office.
Oh, wow.
And so, and
Wow.
nothing in that vet's office had changed in 12 years, with
Wow.
the exception of me.
With the exception of you.
Because in that 12-year span of time, and I'm not dissing the ladies because they're the
Yeah.
same women that I worked with the 12 years previously who were still there
Wow.
working that job. And I know what they made, right?
Yeah.
Which is not enough to live on. And my circumstances in those 12 years catapulted, and I'm the chief operations officer of a multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was it though that was different between like what I was able to accomplish in 12 years and what they had accomplished in 12 years? Because I just sat there thinking like, I wish for everyone that a 12-year span of time goes by and you have exponentially changed for good.
Yeah. Good. An
Right?
expansion of yourself. Yes.
And
Yes.
I kind of felt sorry for them a little bit because and maybe they're perfectly happy. I mean, I'm not going to judge. Maybe they
Right.
are very happy and that's exactly where they wanted to be and where they
Yeah.
saw their life being. I just know how I felt when I worked in that job 12 years previously, that I wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't cover all my bills. Like it was super stressed out. Like what a difference 12 years worth of time had made for me, because a lot happened.
What made you leave the job?
What made me leave the job is that again, it wasn't enough money coming in to cover my basic living expenses.
Right.
And so I needed, I continued to work there even after, for a while, even after I took on, jumped into a new position. And
Yeah.
I continued to work there for a while because I did like the people I worked with. I loved that vet's office. Obviously, 12 years later, I'm still
You're
taking
still
my
there.
meds there, right? It was never meant to be the place that I was going to be for 12 years. And in that 12-year time, I've only really been at one other company, but the exponential growth that I had and capabilities that I had in that change of scene and job was night and day different. I
Yeah.
had the ability to enter in on a ground level and work my way up, whereas the job of the vet's office would always just be the reception.
Right. Exactly. It was never
Right.
going to change.
I mean, I guess I could have gone and back to school and become a veterinarian.
And
So
some
there's
people
that.
like that stability. They don't, even though it's not very prosperous necessarily,
Correct.
they like the consistency,
Yes.
that it's the same, and they find comfort in that.
I think, and that's probably the key difference, is I knew early on I needed a bigger challenge
Yeah.
in my career. So like I was never happy being the person who punched widgets, went to the same job every day, did the same thing every
Me
day. Like
either.
I need the
Me
variety.
either.
I
Me
need
too.
I need a clear growth path. I need challenge. I crave being challenged, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I was never gonna get that as the receptionist at a
No.
doctor's office.
No, you weren't.
And if we're talking to our younger self, those experiences were necessary to help me eliminate the things I knew I didn't need so
Yeah.
that I could find the thing I did need, right? So you do have to go through some of those things, right? And I think we're so hell bent on like picking a career and staying the course and blah blah blah, and the reality is most people actually have 6 different varying careers in their lifespan, and
Oh,
probably more. I mean, young kids, the statistics probably worse now. I don't know exactly what it is, but the
yeah.
last time I looked it up, it was like people would have 6 different varying careers in their lifespan. I think you have to go through some of that stuff because we as humans evolve over time,
We do, and we change.
and you need to experience
And I think that's really
things.
important, especially in your 20s,
Yeah.
because that's that whole decade is about exploration, about trying on different things, see what
Yep.
fits, see what feels right for you. I mean, I know I've done a whole bunch of different things. And one of the things I also discovered for myself was that I'm like you, I cannot do like a 9 to 5, sit in the office cubicle, do the same thing every day. That
My
drives
brain
me
shuts down.
insane. I just, I no, I can't
Mhm.
do it. I shut down. That is not the environment for me. And that was something I learned by, I had different, like I did a temp agency for a while and did different office jobs, and I realized, oh no, no, this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
This is not gonna be my bag. And then I found this one temp agency, which was when I was living in LA, which is kind of cool. And they focused specifically on getting artists and performing artists in particular, because I was acting at the time and modeling and all that kind of stuff. And they focused on getting those kind of people temp jobs. And so one of the jobs that they
Okay.
got me was being a personal assistant to an interior designer who created all these kiosks and these things that you see up in the malls and stuff
Yeah.
and the storefronts. That was what she did, was she designed those things, and I was her personal assistant. And I loved that job because it was different. It was something new every day.
Mhm.
I was doing something on an individual basis. It was creative. I had a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of freedom at the same time.
Sure.
That was really a nice match,
Yeah.
because it was not the office thing. I think for me, one of the things I would definitely would have advised myself is to, really commit to something that I have a passion for, right? And to really
Absolutely.
that speaks to my heart. And instead of just trying to do things that I, thought people might want to have me do, to try
Mhm.
different different options, different careers, and to really follow that passion and really commit to it. I wish that I would have been able to go back and say, you love acting, you love performance, you're in this place where you can do that. Go for it, commit to it 100%. Put everything you've got into it rather than trying to juggle it and do both things simultaneously, which kind of diffuse the energy. And it took me a lot longer to start moving forward with that career because of that.
Well, and it's funny how I think, especially artistic positions and careers, how much people like downplay and or degrade the artistic careers as not being valuable enough.
It's true.
Because
Without being
like
serious.
I am an artist and I love art, but I never saw that as a viable career choice growing up at all. And so that, and in fact, a lot of people around me like didn't have great views on like what the earning potential was for an artist and things like that. And so like
Right.
that starts to you start to hear that from people,
You do.
right? And that tracks you away from doing the thing that you probably were meant to do. And just because traditional art is difficult didn't mean that with artistic talent you couldn't have a variety of careers.
Right.
Especially at the time when graphic design was just becoming a thing when I graduated from high school.
Right.
Like it wasn't just you weren't just a traditional painter or
Yeah.
artist. Like we were on the cusp of like an explosion of technology art.
Yes.
And I think the same goes now with kids today, and AI becomes an integral
Yeah.
part of that. Like there's industries that don't even exist today that will be super prevalent in the next 5 to 10 years.
It's true.
But if you talk to, like, if you were sitting at home, right, and talking to your kid who's going into college and telling him, hey, I know you're really interested in gaming or AI or whatever, but you're never going to make any money at that. So you go over here and be an accountant. Maybe he's really good at AI, gaming, art, blah, blah. And
Yeah,
his earning potential in 5 to 10 years as the industries increase could be exponential, much more than an accountant, and he would be more fulfilled. So
absolutely.
my biggest
Absolutely.
frustration is that people impress upon their own worldviews on the young people and say, hey, this is what you should do.
Yeah. And their own limitations, and a lot of times their own dreams, which they didn't manifest or fulfill for themselves. And they try and get their children or other young people to like do it for them, right? Like so they can somehow live vicariously through that person's, what they try to pursue through that career choice, even though it has nothing to do with that person's actual desires or wants.
Absolutely. That if I could impart any wisdom even on parents today, or anyone who grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, stop telling these kids that they should follow a specific career path. Let
100%.
let them be them. And if
100%.
they fall on their face, we all fell on our faces and had to pick
Yeah.
ourselves up. It's a learning process.
That's part of life experience. You have to try it. You have to go out and do
Yes.
it. Otherwise, you never gain that knowledge, and that knowledge only comes through living. It doesn't come through talking. It doesn't come through just hearing it. You have to apply the knowledge and try it.
Yeah.
That's where you gain that experience. And to me, that's where wisdom comes from as well. Is as you start to apply these things, like, oh, that didn't work. I went through a period of time where I was burning all my bridges. I would think, oh, I'm never going to come back to, I don't need these people anymore. I'm done with this. So I would just like torch these relationships and burn all these bridges. And then I thought, oh, I'll just never need it again. So I don't care. It was very callous. It was a very selfish way of thinking. That didn't even really strike me as that until later. And I would have loved to have imparted that knowledge that, always be respectful of other people's relationships, your relationship with other people, and always honor each one of those and the value that it's contributing to your life, because you never know when you might want to come back to those relationships.
Mm.
And the way I learned that was through a hard lesson, is because I did that and I burned some bridges with some people who were like really close to me at one point. And I was just a total dirt. I was a jerk. I was a dick. And was like, and I saw the hurt in their eyes when I torched the relationship. And then later on, like about, maybe 6 months later, I wanted to reconnect, and they wanted nothing to do with me. Well, of course they didn't, because I had consciously destroyed the relationship.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, maybe this is not the wisest thing to be doing here.
Yeah.
But if I wish I'd been, could have been part of that knowledge to myself earlier, to value each relationship for what it is, and to have graceful endings and partings, so that they can maintain that possibility of reconnecting again in the future, if that's how spirit guides you, right? So the value, I think, of each one of those things, rather than having such a selfish, like, I'm just going to use you for what I can get out of you right now, and then I'm done with you and throw you away kind of idea. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm sound like painting myself like I'm this horrible person, but it was a period of time where I was doing that.
No, and I think in your early 20s, like, you're just more judgmental.
Yeah,
Like,
I
because you
was.
haven't
I was.
experienced enough a variety of things, experience, and don't have a clear understanding of who you are,
Correct.
really trying to find where the limits are. And whether
Correct.
it's relationships or interactions or whatever the case may be. I know in my early 20s, I was much more judgmental and less
So was I.
accepting
So
of
was I.
people. And that it did come out across, I'm sure, that as cold or callous or
Yeah.
whatever in some of those relationships for sure. And I think also in your early 20s, you're trying to understand who you are,
You
and
are.
like you don't give yourself enough grace to make
Yeah.
mistakes, be different,
Oh,
and not worry so much about what other people think.
yeah, that
Like, we're
happens a
so
lot.
rigidly wound up, I think, in our early 20s because we're trying to figure out who we are.
I was such a perfectionist at that point. I was
Yeah,
hyper
me
anal.
too.
Everything had to have
Me
it
too.
exactly the right place, exactly this way. I wanted to control every single aspect that I
Yep.
could in my life. And I was really about being perfect. It's like, oh my God, I had this whole thing. I would laugh and say, I had these little comments about being perfect. People was like, I would say, I'm nobody and nobody's perfect. And they'd be like, oh my God, seriously? And then I'd be like,
Too funny.
I used to be arrogant, but arrogance a fault, and now I'm perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of arrogance in your early 20s.
There
unfortunately.
definitely
Again,
was. And
because we haven't realized that, everybody makes mistakes and
it's
we make a lot of them. So
part about being human is that
yeah,
growth process that happens there. But yeah, it's interesting to look back on some of that, it really is.
for sure.
Just I think that level of self-acceptance too. I think that was another thing that I would want to impart to my younger self was about just accepting myself for who I am, that it's okay to be who I am. Because there was a
Hmm.
lot of judgment because I didn't come out until I was 25, fairly older, because after I'd moved to San Francisco, because there was a lot of really repressive energy where I lived, and
Hmm. Yeah.
I grew up in a place that was physically dangerous to come out. It was like very conservative and redneck, and it was intense. And there was no gay people anywhere in my whole town that I lived in that I knew of.
That you knew of. There were.
Yeah, there
They were
probably
just
were. Actually, I found out later
there.
there was two
I'm
guys.
sure there were. I'm sure there were. And there were probably more than that. They just didn't, yeah, weren't being honest on who they
Correct.
were.
And so there was
Because
a whole part that had a whole issue, I had a whole
yeah.
time with that about accepting who I was, right?
Mhm.
And although my mom was wonderful as far as imparting that knowledge to me as an older person to a younger person about to always be true to yourself and be
Yeah.
authentic, not worry about what other people thought. And she was very
Sure.
big about teaching us that, it's like it doesn't matter
Do you
what they
think
think.
she taught you that because she knew? Because a lot of parents are
I
like,
don't
what?
know.
They
She
knew?
taught all three of us, all three, and I'm the only gay
Okay.
person in the family. But I think it was more of a moral ethical thing for her that it's like
Okay.
not to allow other people's opinions to form your identity.
Sure.
And so it was a really big thing about owning who you are, right? It's like
Yeah.
it took me a while for that to sink in other parts of my life, I think, as I got older, but it did
Right.
finally got in there, owning who you are, right? And
Yeah.
being your own self without judging. And that part of that was also butting up against religious Christian stuff as well. That was like judgmental around,
Yeah.
being any kind of variations, especially being gay. And of course, we're supposed to have
Yeah.
premarital sex and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
all this.
The things I wish I could tell my younger self, be more open
It's true.
to ideals other than what are being impressed upon you from an
Right.
organization,
Right.
it
Right.
is an organization that
It is.
unfortunately is a business.
It
And
is.
so be very careful and open-minded and fact check and be your own person. Do
Yeah.
not take
Be your own
everything
person.
everyone tells you at face value.
Correct.
And especially when they're using shame to prevent you
Yes.
from doing something, because the
Yes.
church is all wrapped up in shame and
Yeah.
they shame you for your
Guilt.
sexuality, they
Yep.
shame you for anything that you do.
Anything, any variation at
And the
all.
people who are in there shaming you, they are not blameless by any
No,
way,
they're
shape, or
usually
form.
doing that same stuff behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Correct.
They just,
Correct.
but they don't want to get caught.
My
So
my favorite Bible verse was, and I don't even remember what verse it is, but it's don't point out the speck in somebody else's eye because you have the plank in your
like in
own.
your own, that was from
Correct.
Jesus. Yep, saying that.
That's one
Yep.
that has always
Yep.
stuck with me because I feel like there's a lot of that going on.
Well, and that calls out the hypocrisy of trying to, tear the people down because of who they are, traits that they have, your own traits yourselves that you're not even looking at. You don't want to look in your mirror, right? No, you want to look in the mirror
Correct.
and look at what you're actually dealing with yourself, facing the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror kind of thing. It's like looking at yourself. You want to, and that to me goes to a spiritual truth is that, if you want to create a change in your world and your reality, you change yourself. You don't try and
Mhm.
make other people change. You
Yep.
change yourself. You do internal change work, and that will reflect a change in your world because your
Oh,
vibration will
absolutely.
energy or resonance will shift, and the universe will have to respond differently because you're vibrating at a different frequency.
Yep.
There's no other possibility. It will have to change. And it's very self-empowering in that way, that kind of self-reflection, I think.
Well, and being open, I think, to change also give yourself some grace because as
Yeah,
time goes on, you learn more.
you do.
If you could impart anything to your younger self, is just be open to the idea of things because
Yeah.
you never know like what you might come across or be experiencing that could actually be super beneficial for your
Yes.
long-term growth as a human.
Yes. Also, I think another thing that I would like to impart it to myself, which I learned later in life, was about, realizing that everybody is a reflection of yourself, and that when you see somebody going through something, there's some part of you that also is going through that similar experience, or otherwise it wouldn't have shown up in your reality. And so to have compassion for people going through different experiences, because that is a reflection of you, right? And so the idea of treating everybody like a beloved family member or friend, right?
Sure.
That which to me was the essence of Christ's message in the Bible, who is a spiritual master, teaching like love your neighbor, right? Love your
Yeah.
neighbor as yourself. But I think about that for just a second. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, you love yourself first, right? You love yourself,
Sure.
and then you love your neighbor the same way in which you're loving yourself. That criteria. So
Yeah.
it's really about accepting people for who they are, accepting yourself for who you are, having compassion for where everybody is in their own life track, their own life span, and the challenges each person comes across, right? And we
Yeah.
try and help each other in that process when we can, if you're so drawn to do that.
Well, and I can already hear like the naysayers going, but what about that guy who commits murder? And, you know, you're not talking about like just allowing people to
No,
walk all over you, right?
no, not being a
You should
doormat.
walk into most situations with an open mind and grace
Yes,
to not judge right off the bat. And
correct.
we almost are conditioned to do that in the world that we live in now.
We
We
are.
have all of these we separate everything into boxes, we put everything in a
Yep,
package, or we try to
yep.
define things into a group, right?
Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, you lose the ability to see the beauty of how everything is interconnected.
Also, in the beauty of diversity in our world, right?
Correct.
I mean, that to me is like amazing. That's one of the things that I loved about Star Trek with the Vulcan philosophy. They were talking about, that in that infinite diversity, that is the strength of the species, right? That is how, and we as human beings, that is our strength, is our diversity. I would not want everybody to be same. That would be boring as hell. Who would
Yeah.
want that? That and embracing that everybody is different. We all have different worldviews too, world
Yeah.
perspectives, right? The way that we interact. And I think that's one of the values of like traveling, for instance. You get exposed to different cultures and different ways of thinking. And it's like expands your consciousness and recognizes that, oh, you know what? I hadn't thought about thinking the world that way. I never thought about the world working in that fashion before. And that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it really broadens your own perspective, and you might even adopt that for your own because you've been exposed to something you hadn't been exposed to before. And I think that's a really powerful messaging as far as getting out from where you were raised, right? To go somewhere else and at least try something different.
I don't know if you've seen the Dave Chappelle, the most recent
I haven't.
comedy show that he's done. He
Uh-huh.
opens it with your dream is your own type
Nice.
quote.
Nice.
And like in the end, in his closing kind of monologue, he's talking about how everyone is living in your dream and you are living in everyone else's dream.
It's
And
true.
I just found that whole idea of that to
It's
be
true.
super profound.
It is.
You have to be wise. I think he said you have to be wise enough to know when you're living in your dream, and you have to be humble enough to accept that you are living in other people's dreams. And I
That's
found that to
that's
be
nice. Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
really awesome thought, because that means
Yeah.
that like from a grace and acceptance standpoint.
It is. And it also puts you in the driver's seat of your own life, right? You recognize that, you are the dreamer. You are the one that's dreaming this thing we call your life, right? Your life.
Correct.
And that you're the one that's like creating that dream, and you're co-creating it with others, with the divine, as well as other people who are participating in that dream with you, because like I said, you're also part of their dream, right? So you're dreaming together and having
Correct.
this experience where you're both growing in this process and learning from each other, and hopefully supporting each other in a way that's in a loving and expansive way in that process also. I love that concept though. I really do. I was first exposed to that when I got exposed to metaphysics many years ago. And that whole concept about, that your reality, your life is a dream, and that you're the dreamer. And it's like, oh, that made a lot of sense. Because I always used to think about, the Matrix brought this up as well. What if you were having a dream that was so realistic, so much like your actual life, that you didn't even know it was a dream until you woke up, right? And I've had those kind of dreams where I thought I was actually living my life doing something, and then something kind of weird happens that's like, how is this possible? Like a door opens into another reality. And I'm thinking, I'm dreaming. I must be dreaming right now.
Yeah.
And then I would wake up, and I've had it happen where I wake up and I continue on my life, and I realize I'm still in a dream. I'm in another reality, but I'm still in a dream. It's a layered dream. And then
Yeah.
I wake up again, and then I'm in my bed. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then the concept of the idea that what if you couldn't wake up? How could you tell the difference between the dream life and the real life?
Yeah.
You
There are
you
days where I'm sitting here
you
fully
couldn't.
conscious and think this must be a dream
Yeah,
or
and it
nightmare. I'm not
is.
sure which.
Depends on how the day is going and how much
Yeah,
negative energy is being
exactly.
run.
Yeah. Another thing I wish I would could tell my younger self is that you do not have to surround yourself with toxic people. If
Oh,
somebody is
so
toxic,
true.
you do not have to give into that energy. You have the
So
ability
true.
to pick yourself up and walk away. You
Yes.
can just be done.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if that toxic person is a friend, a family
Family
member,
member,
any of the, somebody
a
who supports
lover,
you. You do not
partner.
have
Yeah.
to give your time, attention,
Or
or
energy.
anything to a toxic person.
100%
It
agree.
is okay to remove yourself from a situation. Yeah.
That's definitely something I had a hard time learning. And that was something I wish I would have known as well. That would have probably told my
Yeah.
younger self too, that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no
Correct.
to negativity and to not be around, like I said, toxic people, or remove yourself from toxic circumstances
Or
that you
just say
know
no.
is feeling bad.
Yeah, or just say no to something you don't want to
Don't
do.
want to do.
I realize that, like, and I'm better about this now, like, because I will just honestly say, no, I don't want to do that. But I used to just agree to go do things with
Me too.
people that
Me
I
too.
did not want to do. And then I would have that visceral, like, reaction once we
Yeah.
got there that, like,
Yeah.
I was not in the situation that I felt comfortable in.
Yeah.
And like as I've gotten older, like you really need to pay attention to those
Those
cues.
inner world cues.
And
Exactly
it's
right.
okay to disappoint someone and
Yes,
say, "Hey, I don't want to do this.
it is.
This is
That's
not
what it is.
cool. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this." No shade to you if you do.
Yeah.
Peace out. I'm done.
And
Like,
that's something that I would also would have told my younger self is that you do not have to defend your choices either. You don't have to
no,
make an excuse for it. If it's not appropriate for you, all you do is you have to say, no, this I don't want to do this. This is not appropriate for me. That's it. You don't have to justify your decisions or justify your choices about why you're making that choice. When I learned this, we had this question about you have a chocolate ice cream cone and a vanilla ice cream cone. Which one do you choose? So which one would you choose? Chocolate or vanilla, Tiffany?
right now, today, chocolate.
Yeah. Why?
Because I feel like the chocolate would taste better today.
But why?
Because I like the taste of chocolate today versus vanilla because I feel like it.
Uh-huh. So why do you like chocolate?
I like chocolate because everybody likes chocolate, don't they?
Not everybody likes chocolate.
Not everybody likes chocolate.
So it comes down to the fact that you
Because I
choose
do,
chocolate
that's why.
right, because you choose chocolate. That's exactly right.
It's
No
my choice.
justification.
I
You
don't have
tend
to
to
defend why I want chocolate versus vanilla today.
you do not.
Ken, just give me the goddamn chocolate ice cream cone.
That's
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And
yeah.
that was the point. We automatically want to try and come up with the reasons to justify our choices. And you don't have to have
No,
any reason at all. Why you choose chocolate today?
because I
Because
feel
I
like it.
choose chocolate. That's
Yeah,
it. That's why.
yeah.
That's all there is. Why
I
are
think we're conditioned to have to justify
we
everything.
are conditioned to have to justify, and
Huh.
that was the
Ooh.
point that was making, is that
Yeah.
you do not have to
I
justify
fell
your
right into that
choices.
one. Damn it. Okay.
That's why I set you up. It's true.
Yeah, that's all right.
But it's a good example for the
But no,
listeners.
that's a really great example because I probably do that in 1,000 different decisions.
Yeah.
Somebody challenges the decision
Yeah.
and I just made that decision because I feel like it.
Right. Because
Like,
it's what's right
what
for
does it
you.
matter to you whether I want chocolate or vanilla?
And it doesn't matter.
Are
Right?
you
It
trying to
really
convince
doesn't.
me to have chocolate or vanilla because you want chocolate or vanilla? You go
Right.
fucking have whatever chocolate, whether you want
Have
chocolate.
whatever which one you want, right? It's like we
Maybe I
can
don't
both
want
have what
chocolate
we
or
want.
vanilla. Maybe I'd rather have strawberry. We're good.
Maybe you want a swirl and you want both
Can
that
I have
day.
both? Yeah. That was an option? Yeah. Yeah, I
So
get
just
it.
that was the point, is that we're so conditioned to do that,
We
to
are.
justify our choices and to defend our choices. And you don't have to do that at all. There's
Yeah.
nothing. You have the right to you have the right to make choices that are what is appropriate for you in that moment. And it might change, the next day it might
Sure.
be different. But you have the right to make those choices and to be who you are without defending your choices and without having to justify it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Really,
Interesting.
really powerful point. And that would have been really helpful, I think, when I was younger, especially the coming out process, as well as just owning my own likes. And I got a lot of crap for just liking different things, when being different than other people.
Yeah.
And since mom had encouraged us to be our true selves, I went ahead and did it anyway. And I just got a lot of shit because of it. But I
Yeah.
went ahead and did it anyway. But part of me kind of felt bad. I kind of turned it onto myself. I went through a period of time where I didn't love myself as much. I was
Well,
thinking that
because
something
I
was
think
wrong with me.
you start to internalize it, right?
You do.
And it really, you don't need to justify it. It is just a choice. Like you are the
A choice.
chooser, and I'm deciding to make a choice today. And I think we
Exactly.
do that. We feel like we have to justify all of our choices when
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a choice because you feel like it. And
Right.
so, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it is okay. And this is especially about personal growth we're talking about in particular,
Yeah.
your own personal preferences. I mean, obviously, if you're, working on a team with other people and you're making a decision, you need to, talk to them about how you reached that decision and why you're making that choice for this
Hmm.
particular group, or, it's a different level of responsibility there. And I think it is important to have collaboration at that point. But what we're
No,
talking
yeah.
about here is personal growth things, right? Personal preferences. Like I said,
That's a good nuance to point out
hmm,
that, in a team environment,
yeah,
you don't just get to say, I want chocolate
yeah,
because I want chocolate. You
right,
may have to justify, especially if the collective has to come to a decision together,
correct.
because just imparting your ideals only
Yeah,
without thought to how it affects the big picture in a
right.
team environment
Right.
isn't
It's
okay
it's like
either.
when I was growing up, the thing I hated that my parents did with when they did, and they didn't do it a lot, when they did do this with like, why do I have to do this? Because I said so. But why? Because I
Yeah,
said so.
the big
That wasn't
because I said
enough.
so.
Because I said so didn't cut it. I
Yeah.
wanted I wanted to know what the thought process was behind that.
Correct.
What was
Because
the
you're learning
reasoning
how to make the thought process as a
and to
young
make
adult.
decisions,
So
right?
you need to
Exactly.
know, like,
How did you
why.
reach that decision, and what
Correct.
what was the thought process that it got you to the point where you decided, no, you can't do this. This is why I'm establishing this boundary. That
Which
kind of
I
thing.
think we miss. That's probably something that, again, if you could impart wisdom to someone who is in an environment where you're teaching someone, whether it be your kids or work or
Students or
school or whatever the
coworkers
case
or
may be,
whatever.
them challenging the decision isn't necessarily about them pushing back. It's because they really do need to understand the process that led to you.
Exactly.
And if you just say, because I said so, you are negating the opportunity to teach them how to make those thought processes.
Great point, Tiffany. 100% agree with you. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's about teaching the thought process, right? To be able to teach the process so that they can then empower themselves to be able to do the same thing in their
Mhm.
own lives in other areas,
Yeah.
So you're giving a tool, and by saying just because I said so, you take away that opportunity to teach, right? You take away that opportunity to grow and give them that tool.
Well, and also I think you have young people who are just curious.
Yeah,
As a young person, you are curious about like how things function, how things
correct.
interconnect.
Yeah.
And to just say because I said so, and society says because I said so in a
Yes.
variety of different ways, and
Yes.
organizations with no
Yes.
explanation as to why you should believe or do something a certain
Correct.
way. Right.
Correct.
So I would impart wisdom to my younger self by saying, continue to challenge
Yes.
those ideals, continue to ask, even when they say, because I
Yes.
said so,
Yes.
but ask better questions.
Yeah.
Because just pushing back because somebody said, because I said so, doesn't help them to understand what it is you need. So you have to be
Correct.
able to advocate for what part of that scenario do you not understand? Like
Yeah.
ask the follow-up questions, ask, because I
Yeah.
think if you approach it in a different way by
I agree.
asking the follow-up questions
I
and
agree.
not just challenging the because I said so,
Yeah.
that you will then get what you want, which is the reality is how did we get to that decision?
Correct.
Because it
Exactly.
wasn't just an arbitrary decision most times,
No, it's not.
because most decisions aren't as easy as chocolate or vanilla, right?
No, they're not.
And there's thought process that goes into it, and it may be a much more complex. But if you don't give young people the ability to understand how you got there, they're
Right.
missing out. But also the young people have to ask better questions,
Yeah. I think
because
it's a
otherwise
great
you
point.
just come across as an asshole who's pushing back because somebody said so or had already put in a lot of work and effort, and you're
Yeah.
just being the resistance
Yeah.
to them accomplishing whatever the end goal was. But
Right.
if you can come together and communicate more effectively on your need for understanding in the situation,
Yes.
like I think people
Yes.
are less resistant to actually explaining what their thought process was.
I think you're right. If your intention of your communication is to try and gain understanding, and you come from that perspective, like you said, and you ask from questions from that viewpoint, I think people are a lot more willing to open up about, okay, well, this is my thought process. This
Yeah.
is how I came to this decision. This is why I'm saying this right now.
Yeah. This
Great examples
happens
of
even today as an adult. Like I just was in a
yeah,
meeting an hour ago with a client who was just like, this is what we're going to do. Right. And at first I was resistant to, I could feel myself because I think we're ingrained to ask why.
yeah, we
Like,
are.
what do you mean? Can you give me more? It took me a minute to get the right question, to get the
Yeah,
leverage that I
yeah,
needed to do an end run around this person so I really could get to the bottom of what that person was
yeah,
trying to accomplish. It wasn't he was being a hard ass and an asshole and saying this is what we're going to do. Like he's legitimately trying to develop something,
yeah.
and the reality is after I picked at it from a couple of different angles, asked some questions, imparted some information, we are actually on the same page with what
Nice.
needs to happen. But like if he had just been an asshole and said, this is how we're gonna do it because I said so, immediately the relationship would have been shit.
Yeah, it would
And
have
we have been
been
at
blocked.
odds. There has been some major resistance.
Yeah,
But in that communication and asking those follow-up questions and not being an asshole myself, because I can go that direction.
right.
I can
Especially in
provide just as
business.
much resistance to you as you're giving to me, buddy.
That's right. I can give it right
Right?
back to you.
Right. But like taking a step back and asking for some clarifying questions so I have a better understanding from a couple of different angles helps me
Yeah,
to be able to really dissect what was going on in that
yeah,
situation
yeah,
so that I have a level of comfort. I
yeah.
need to be able to ask those questions though.
You do.
So if you're just
Absolutely.
a hard ass who says, we're doing it this way because I said so, you and I are probably not going to get along
Right.
because
Exactly.
I need to know. So I would say if you're a young person, fucking ask the questions. And there's no,
Ask the
I'm
questions.
amazed at how many people start the conversation with, this is a dumb question, but. And I'm like, every time they say that, I'm like, there is no such thing as a dumb question
I
because the
agree.
fact that you're honest enough to have to ask a question for clarifying purposes
Yeah.
means that you're thinking, which thinking is not a
Yes.
dumb response.
It's not. And you're also,
Accepting what
yeah.
I'm telling you to do at face value with no thought process, that's dumb.
Yeah. And you're also evaluating the situation, which you're looking and trying to gain further insight by asking the question, right?
Yeah.
You're actually doing something to gain clarity and acknowledging that, okay, I don't have knowledge or expertise in this area. So that's why I'm asking you, explain to me, how is this going to accomplish the goal that we're looking to achieve? What is it?
Mhm.
How did you come up to this idea? Or another thing I like to do in those kind of circumstances is asking, so if we do this, what's that going to accomplish for us? What's that going to do? Because that will get beyond that because I said so. It's like, well, so if we do the way you said, because you said so, if we do that, what's that going to do for you? And that will make them level up. It'll make them chunk up and
Correct.
go to a bigger picture and go, well, then we'll have more solvency in our business. Oh, and how is that going to work? How is that, what is that going to give us? Well, that'll give me more confidence and I'll be more secure in my investments. Oh,
Correct.
okay. So then, and you keep chunking up to get to a bigger picture where you can gain that mutual understanding like you were talking about.
But I think that mutual understanding and that growth and the asking the questions and things like that helps you feel more secure in whatever it is
Hmm.
that you're doing. And it gives you
Hmm.
that buy-in so you can level up.
Yes, exactly
Right.
right. Exactly right.
So
I think you're right. That's one of the things to impart to our younger selves is to
oh,
don't be scared to ask the questions. And
no,
it's okay if you think you look dumb, don't worry about it.
no,
Ask the
the people
questions
who
anyway.
look dumb are the ones who sit in the corner of the conference room and never say anything.
Yeah.
Those are the people who like had a spot at the table and never said a fucking word.
And don't say
Those are the
anything.
people who are dumb. I've always been the person who sat at the table and I am part of that conversation. And
Me too.
because of that, that has allowed me to level up. That's why the 12
Right.
years spent between the time I was a receptionist to the 12 years later as the chief operations officer was so exponential because every time I got a seat at the table, I made sure I was part of that conversation, even if it was just to ask clarifying questions.
Correct. Exactly. Participate, right?
Correct.
Participate in your world, in your reality, and what's going on around you.
Well, and share
Don't
your
sit there and be an
thoughts because
observer and share your thoughts.
you never know if you might have a perspective, a unique understanding of something, and a unique way of looking at something
Yeah,
that
that somebody else
actually may
doesn't.
be really beneficial to whomever you're talking to, right? Or whatever
Correct.
team you're a part of.
Correct.
Because we all have a whole bunch of different life experiences. And I think that it's through that enrichment of all those life experiences that you bring a uniqueness to the conversation that no one else has.
I agree. And that
Yeah.
values each of our own individual contributions. And then, there's Mark Victor Hansen, the guy who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, that book. One of the
Hmm.
things he talks about is that everybody has one good book in them, and it's a book about your life
Yeah.
because everyone has your own unique perspective, your own version of the world and how you see it. And
Yeah.
no two people are the same. Even twins are not the same. And
Correct.
so you always have that unique perspective, and it's important to value that and recognize it does have value. And like I said, that's why it's important to contribute and to ask questions and to participate because you never know how that's going to positively impact the entire space you're in because you contributed, right? Because you put forth your perspective. And it may or may not, but you won't ever know if you don't try it. If you don't do it, if you just sit there and say nothing and be silent, then you've basically given up. You've lost that opportunity.
Okay. Final thoughts. If you could only give your younger self one piece of advice, what would be the most important thing that you, looking back, wish to tell yourself?
For me, it would be about finances. No
Mm,
one taught me about money
yeah.
when I was growing up, and our family was we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and so there was always this kind
Yeah.
of poverty consciousness going on.
Yeah.
And I think I would have told myself to educate myself around money and to look into three different areas. So I thought that was a beautiful thing. Someone just told me this the other day that they were taught by their a mentor. And I thought it was so powerful, to look into owning your own business, doing some kind of investing, and
Yep.
owning property, real estate. That if you focus on those three areas and doing something in all three of those areas, no matter what the markets are doing, no matter what is happening in the financial world, one of them will be strong while the other ones might be weak. You will always be covered. You'll
Yeah.
always have security, financial
For sure.
security. So I think for me, I would have loved if someone had sat down and just talked to me about money and how
Yeah.
it worked because I had no perception at all about how money worked or how much you needed to live on or anything. There was
Mhm.
no that education was completely lacking in my upbringing. I'm not
No, for
blaming
sure.
anybody, but that would have been really a powerful thing for me. I remember I was probably third or fourth grade, something like that. I remember my one of my friends was asking me, "Well, how much money does your dad make every month?" I had no clue. And I
Couldn't
told
tell
him
you.
$100 because I thought that was a lot of money.
Sure.
And he laughed. He says, "Your dad makes a lot more than $100. There's no way you could live on $100 a month."
It's too funny that you're having that conversation at third grade. Yeah.
I mean, like really young,
Yeah.
because his dad was prosperous.
Sure.
And and that just showed me how I had absolutely no concept
Yep.
whatsoever about how money worked, how much you needed to do things with, or anything. Nothing. So
Well,
that'd be something I would have imparted to my younger self was to embrace not thinking money is dirty or bad or you have to be
uh-huh.
corrupt in order to make money or that it
Yeah.
has or that's the root of all evil, all these negative things we hear about money in our lives. That to me would be something I would have imparted on myself to break that negative programming around
Well,
finances
and
and
we
money.
still have this poverty consciousness, like us against them, the haves and the have-nots and the different classes within our society.
Yeah,
And this, like, we're almost like degrade you if you have been successful, but yet we all
yeah,
want to be successful, we all want to be
right,
one percenters, but yet
right,
we're going to shit all over the people who actually made it to 1%. I
right.
don't think people realize how much work and effort goes into getting in for most people, not everybody. Some people luck into it and they're born into it. But Jesus Christ, these people who are in that, top 5% earners
Yeah,
working their asses off. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
no joke, they're working their asses off. A lot of people depend on them. Yeah, no, they're not all good people, but
yeah,
we only seem to poke at or analyze the very small percentage of that top tier that is bad and
yeah. You're
not
right.
all of the people who are doing so much good.
And then that focuses on this negative energy around being wealthy, right, or having money.
Correct.
because you're thinking, oh well, you're horrible pieces of shit if you're a billionaire or if you're
Yeah.
rich because you've had to do all these horrible things to get there. It's like that's such negative programming, and it's
Yeah.
not accurate
No.
either. But at the same time, it's like there's that then tells your subconscious mind, well, I'm never going to manifest wealth then because that means I'm going to be a bad person because bad people are rich. And so
Yeah.
then you have this whole, what I say, dysfunctional dynamic that focuses in your internal world around
Correct.
money. And something I learned from one of my spiritual teachers that was really powerful is that having money doesn't make you a different person. It just makes it more obvious what kind of person you are
Oh,
because
yeah, for sure.
you have greater impact.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're a good person and you have money, then you can help a lot more people and you
Oh,
can
yeah.
transform the world in a much bigger way because you have greater impact with all that goodness that you can spread around. Right. And if you're a nasty piece of shit and you have money, you're still going to be a nasty piece of shit and you're going to hurt a lot of people because same thing. It just makes it more obvious who you are because you have greater impact.
I don't know. That's a really good way of looking at it. Money just
Makes it more
magnifies who you really are.
correct. It magnifies who you are. It doesn't change
Interesting.
you. And I thought that was a
Absolutely.
really powerful spiritual message for me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. And that helps kind of disconnect some of that. Excuse me, but on the
Gotcha.
bigger picture level, you wanted to kind of have a more broader perspective as far as a single thing to impart to my younger self. It would be to love and accept myself for who I am. That's what
Yeah.
I would really emphasize that you're okay the way you are, that you have nothing to justify, and to love and accept your uniqueness and your special way that you look at the world, because that's what makes you powerful. That's what
Yeah.
makes you amazing. How about you?
I think for me, the one thing that I would definitely advice I would give is just love the people who are in your life because they're not going to be around forever.
They aren't.
They are too quickly gone. Give them some grace because they're human too. Because I think we have a lot of baggage and hang up
Yeah.
over the family dynamic and previous relationships and everything. And I think
Yeah.
you realize that after they're gone, you don't necessarily get the closure because you didn't have the conversations that you needed to have. But
Yeah.
also, maybe there's a lot of guilt sometimes around like not having done enough or not having to said enough or whatever
Yes.
while you have the people there with you. And so make sure that the people and relationships that are important to you, that you tell them how important they
Yes.
are to you,
So powerful,
because
Tiffany.
so quickly they can be gone in the blink of an eye.
You know, I took that advice to heart because I did caregiving for my mom for
Mhm.
13 years. And I could see the slow decline happening. And it was really hard to be around. But
Yep.
at the same time, I took advantage of that because I made sure and acknowledged how much I valued her, how much she contributed to my life, what she had given to me, how much I loved her. And I
Yeah.
said all those things that I wanted to say while she was still here, and she
Yeah.
could say them back to me. So when she did pass, I didn't feel that regret or remorse, like I hadn't said something I wanted to say because I did exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I told her how much I appreciated her, how much I loved her, and how much she meant to me as well. So glad I did that. Made the whole transition much more graceful and peaceful.
Correct. And it's okay if you didn't get the chance to
Yeah,
say those things. Like
it is.
stop blaming yourself for not having done enough. It's really okay. You did
Really
enough.
is.
You did exactly what was needed at the time, and you cannot go back and change what was done. The past is in the past. And so like give yourself some grace.
You let yourself off the hook.
Correct.
And another thing I would recommend on that is because of my perspective as a spiritual counselor and life
Mhm.
coach, is that you actually can go back and say those things to them. You can go in
Yeah.
a meditative space and call upon that person to come into that meditative space because their spirits are immortal. They never die. The physical body dies, but that spirit is still there. And
Yeah.
you can actually give yourself the opportunity to say the things you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to if you hadn't done that. So that's
Yeah. No,
another element to add to that.
yeah. To be able to still have those conversations.
Yeah, and like you said, to let
Yeah.
yourself off the hook if you didn't do it in the physical realm, it's
Mhm.
okay. We all do the best that we can do at the time that we're in those places with the resources we have available to us. Nobody picks, oh, I'm going to do a crappy job at this. If I have a choice of icky choice and good choice, people are
Yeah.
going to pick the good choice. You always do the best that you can do in every circumstance that you're in. We always do.
Yeah. So, closing thoughts. As we draw this episode to a close, we find ourselves at the end of a deeply personal and universally resonant journey. Together, we've navigated the complex terrain of career choices, pivotal roles in education, the fabric of relationships, and the crucial importance of mental well-being and resilience. We've shared stories of loss and of choosing paths less trodden and of the relentless pursuit of our goals amidst the ever-present winds of change.
We've reflected on the limitations of the worldviews inherited from our youth, from the impact of toxic relationships, from the paramount importance of stress management, and the delicate balance of self-care and work-life harmony. Our exploration ventured into the metaphysical, offering a glimpse into the spiritual dimensions that guide us. We've confronted financial follies with candid advice, celebrated the strength of women and pride in one's sexuality in a patriarchal world, and championed the courage to live authentically in the face of adversity.
This episode wasn't just about looking back. It was a testament to the power of sharing, learning, and growing together. As we part ways today, let's carry forward the wisdom gleaned from these reflections. May we be kinder to ourselves, more understanding of our past choices, and more inspired to embrace our futures with openness, resilience, and authenticity.
Remember, the advice we'd give our younger selves isn't just a message to the past. It's a beacon for our ongoing journey. Let's hold on to the lessons learned, support one another in our growth, and continue to strive for a life that resonates with the deepest truths of who we are.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of reflection and discovery. Until next time, keep leveling up stronger, embrace your story, and live a life that truly reflects the wisdom of your experiences.
Bye.